Washington, the guilty plea of a 30-year-old campaign aide, so green that he listed Model United Nations in his qualifications, shifted the narrative on Monday of the Trump campaign's interactions with Russia. Court documents revealed that Russian officials alerted the campaign, through an intermediary in April 2016, that they possessed thousands of Democratic emails and other dirt on Hillary Clinton. That was 2 months before the Russian hacking of the Democratic National Committee was publicly revealed and the stolen emails began to appear online. The new court filings provided the first clear evidence that Trump campaign aides had early knowledge that Russia had stolen confidential documents on Mrs. Clinton and the committee, attempting drove in a close presidential contest. By the time of a crucial meeting in June of last year, when Donald Trump Jr. and other senior Trump campaign officials met with a Russian lawyer offering damaging information on Mrs. Clinton, some may have known for weeks that Russia had material likely obtained by illegal hacking, the new documents suggested. The disclosures added to the evidence pointing to attempts at collaboration between the Trump campaign and the Russian government, but they appeared to fall short of proof that they conspired in the hacking or other illegal acts. The improbable figure at the center of the new information was a foreign policy advisor to Mr. Trump, George Papadopoulos. It was Mr. Papadopoulos, one of 3 men whose charges were announced on Monday, who appears to have been the first campaign aide to learn about the Russian hacking of Democratic targets. A crucial detail is still missing: whether and when Mr. Papadopoulos told senior Trump campaign officials about Russia's possession of hacked emails. And it appears that the young aide's quest for a deeper connection with Russian officials, while he aggressively pursued it, led nowhere. Mr. Papadopoulos repeatedly promoted the idea of a history-making meeting between Mr. Trump and Vladimir V. Putin, the Russian president. Senior campaign officials, however, said that Mr. Trump should not make the trip and leave it to someone low-level in the campaign so as not to send any signal, according to an email cited in court documents. Mr. Papadopoulos then proposed that he himself, perhaps with another campaign official, travel to Moscow to meet with the Russians. The trip proposed by defendant Papadopoulos did not take place, prosecutors wrote. To grasp the significance of Monday's developments, it helps to recall exactly how the Russian attack unfolded. In September 2015, the FBI made its first call to the Democratic National Committee to report evidence of Russian hackers inside the committee's network. But for 7 months, the word never got beyond an IT contractor, and the hackers apparently had the run of confidential emails and other files. During that time, Mr. Trump was pressed to assemble a team of foreign policy advisors, a difficult task because he was shunned by many Republicans who had served in earlier administrations. In early March, Mr. Papadopoulos, who had been helping the beleaguered campaign of Dr. Ben Carson, offered his services to the Trump campaign. Around March 6, documents say, a campaign supervisor, identified by a former Trump advisor as Sam Clovis, told Mr. Papadopoulos, then living in London, that a principal foreign policy focus of the campaign was an improved relationship with Russia. A week later, traveling in Italy, Mr. Papadopoulos encountered a London-based professor of international relations, Joseph Mifsud, who claimed to have substantial connections with Russian government officials. The court documents do not name Mr. Mifsud, but a Senate aide briefed on the case identified him as the professor in question. Unimpressed by Mr. Papadopoulos at first, Mr. Mifsud became far more interested when he learned that the young traveler was working for the Trump campaign. The 2 men met again in London on March 24, when the professor introduced Mr. Papadopoulos to a Russian woman he said was a relative of Mr. Putin with close ties to senior Russian officials. The same week, Mr. Trump, visiting the Washington Post, was pressed to name his foreign policy team. He read out 5 names, most of them with modest or non-existent public profiles, including Mr. Papadopoulos. Mr. Papadopoulos began emailing campaign officials about his new contacts with his good friend Mr. Mifsud and the Russian woman, whom he incorrectly believed was Mr. Putin's niece, and the possibility of a Trump-Putin meeting. On March 31, back in Washington, Mr. Papadopoulos met Mr. Trump for the first time at a gathering of his new foreign policy team at the candidate's Washington hotel. According to the former Trump advisor who was there, and who spoke on condition of anonymity to avoid offending former colleagues, Mr. Papadopoulos spoke for a few minutes about his Russian contact,